My first experience took place in the latter part of the 80s, about 88, 89. It happened in Missouri, in Greene County, Missouri, not very close to James River. It happened about the latter part of May, early part of June. It was on a evening where some friends of mine were dorking around that afternoon, and this was back when I was 20 stupid. I don't know if you ever been 20 stupid, but I was. And there was we were dorking around one afternoon, playing ball or whatever. We heard that there might be a kegger at this place called the Old Resort, which is by James River. Now, that area where we went to was very underdeveloped at the time. And of course, we're talking almost 35, 40 years ago. The Old Resort was a abandoned old hunting resort or lodge that was away from the main road a good mile and a half. You followed this trail, or what used to be an old driveway, through the forest, and that trail or driveway, if you will, was elevated like 2 feet above the forest floor. And that later will be an important thing to remember as I tell the story. So we went out there. It was going on, being that it was mid to late June. It was going on at like 7:30, 8:30, So it was getting dark, but it was good sunlight still, and we couldn't see anybody out there. And the reason why we liked this place, one, it was in the middle of the woods. None of the buildings were there. It was just all rubble, except for a in-ground old swimming pool, which was fantastic because you can build a bonfire and have a grand old time. But we didn't see any evidence of anybody was there. And so we came to the conclusion they either got busted up by the county officials, or someone just wasn't able to pony up for the keg. So we looked around a little bit, nothing. By the time that we headed back, it was right at dusk, right when the sun is pretty much gone below the horizon, but you still had sunlight. So saying that, the west was to our right, and we were headed due south. And as we were walking along, the number of guys that was there was 8. And we all loaded up in a friend of mine named Scott's old Volkswagen van, went over there, unloaded, went and explored, nothing. And all of us were headed back there. But we broke up in different, groups as we walked up. There was like 3 guys in the front, there was 2 guys in the back, and then there was the group that I was with, which consisted of a guy named Gene, myself, and a guy named Mike. Now, Gene was bigger than I was. He was 6'6", and looked like something the NFL should have grabbed hold of. And I'm 6'3" and not exactly a petite flower myself. And then there was Mike, who was just barely 6 foot. As the groups of people that walked along each other were probably separated anywhere between 100 150 feet. So we weren't exactly walking in one big kumbaya group. And as we were going along, this odor, this smell this funk just sort of fell upon us. It just enveloped us. I mean, it was like a green fog. I mean, it was just really bad. And Gene goes, Ron, what is that smell? I said, dude, I don't know, but it's about to make me sick. We kept on walking along, and all of a sudden, Gene stops dead in his track, and he looks over to his right, towards the west, and he sees a tree like 30 feet away with the sunset in the background. And behind that tree, and I look over there, and behind this tree, and it wasn't a big tree. I mean, had the width of a telephone pole. But behind that tree was, I couldn't make out the face, but it had the conical head, the broad shoulders. I could even make out the fur, in the background, with the sunlight in the background, and somewhat of a hand. And it was doing this back and forth behind the tree. At the time, I thought it was, in a way sort of comical, because it reminded me of those old cartoons where a hippopotamus would try to hide behind a telephone pole. But he was just like this, doing this number. And just, huge figure. I look behind me, no, those guys were accounted for. I look in front of us, no, they're there too. At that point, Gene goes, I can't handle this. And he takes off running. Well, being that he was the biggest one out of a bunch of us, I sure the hell wasn't going to stick around, so I took off running too. And we had to jump over the log that was in front of us, and we hit that ground, and we didn't stop until we got to that van. We passed the guys in front of us. I mean, we were in no way. We just took off running, and we took off running, and we didn't stop until we got the van. Well, when the other guys caught up with us, and we caught our breath, we explained to them what we saw, what we experienced. And even back when I was that age, I sort of had a, skeptical mind, and I tried to analyze this. I'm like, okay, maybe the smell we smelt was like, fermented vomit or something. Because let's face it, we've been out there, people's been out there before and drank, and or something dead, And maybe what we really saw was like a cedar tree swaying in the wind, although I did not recall the wind at the time. So Scott and I, the driver of the vehicle, we went, he took his keys, back. And I know that we were there, I know where to look for and what to look for, because of that log we had to jump over that was crossing the trail. When we returned, there was no smell, and there was no cedar tree, or really not much of anything except for the horizon behind that tree that we were focusing on. We came back, and this haunted me for years. I mean, it even affected my dreams. Anytime something came up in my life that, was something change or unknown, that, like a new job or just something, I would have a dream of this figure in the horizon, looking back and forth. Mm-hmm. Years later, I talked to a primologist, and I told him about this swaying back and forth, or actually I told her, and she was like, I didn't tell her what I said, what is it about a primate doing this back and forth? And she goes, it's very common, especially amongst the apes, chimpanzees, what have you, that when they feel like they're agitated and they're that you are in their area, they do the little, you know, like, and express to you that they're being agitated. And I said, what about a smell? Not that uncommon, especially amongst the males, that they will release a pheromone scent to let you know that you're in a place you don't need to be, you know, in their bubble.
Yeah.
And then it just occurred to me after, you know, years of being a researcher and investigating and sort of studying, you know, how these things react. A Bigfoot doesn't always, when it makes a contact like that to you, they're doing it on purpose. I honestly believe that the one that was in front of us was a distraction from whatever his family pod was behind us in order to get to safety unseen. And that basically, that was my Class A first experience.
Did you estimate the height of it, or
I'm glad you asked.
Or the distance, how far away it was?
Well, let's go with the height first. If you remember at the beginning of my story, I told you that path we were on was 2 feet elevated from the first floor, correct? Rough estimate, and if memory serves, Gene was 6'6", correct? That thing was the same height as Gene, and Gene was 2 feet elevated.
Right.
So, rough estimate, probably 8'6".
Yeah. And how far was it from you?
I estimated maybe 30 feet.
Oh, that's real close.
Yeah.
And it was still light out.
Just enough sunlight to, you know, be able to see. I mean, it wasn't dark as sin, but it was darkish.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of like that period of time in the summertime when it's still daylight. I mean, you know, there's still enough daylight to see the yard, but you start seeing the fireflies.
Yeah, like twilight.
Right.
That's called.
Twilight.
Right, dusk. Could you make out any other details of it?
Could not make a whole lot out of the facial details. I did see, you know, where it had what I thought was a hand, or could be the hand, around that tree. Like I said, about the size of a telephone pole, and it was grasping it. I wouldn't say, you know, holding it like a broomstick, but it was grasping it. So it was a very large hand, and when it was doing this and that, doing that number.
Could you tell what color it was?
No, it was too dark. I don't think it was pitch black, but like I said, the lighting, and being that it had its back with whatever daylight was left back in front of us, you know, it was just one step above for being a soliloquy.
Okay. And you can tell it was covered in hair?
Oh yeah, because, well, we were close enough to it, you know, even then, in the whatever, you know, light was out there, you could see the fur.
Yeah. And then when you guys left, you said you went back later though?
We went back right after.
And
me and another guy.
Any smells, any sightings? Gone. Everything was gone?
Everything was gone when we went back.
Did you go up to the spot where it stood?
No.
No. Because you were young back then.
I was totally stupid.
So now you're an expert, or not not expert, sorry, scratch that. You're an experienced squatcher. So now
I would do my best to reenact the scenario.
Yeah, you're a veteran squatcher. You would go back. Well, that's exciting. I never heard that in all these years. You know, I heard other stories. You've got a lot of other stories.
I got a lot of other stories.
But this was the first I heard of your Class A. So thank you for sharing that. And now let's go get some Mexican food.
Thank you, Sriracha.